Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida. In this show, we talk to leaders of clubs and interesting folks who live here in the Villages to get perspectives of what is happening here in the Villages, Florida. We are a listener-supported podcast. There will be shout-outs for supporters in episodes.
This is Mike Roth. And listeners, I'm thrilled to share with you this podcast, which is my passion project for you. This podcast brings you knowledge, inspiration, and a lot of things that people need to know about the villages and the people living here. Be sure to hit the follow button to get the newest episode each week. Creating this podcast is a labor of love, even though it demands more time than I can easily spare. Now, here's where you come in. You can help us keep the podcast alive and thriving. How? By becoming a supporter. The easy way for you to support us is to visit our podcast webpage, openforuminthevillagesflorida.com, and click on the supporter button at the top of the page, or the purple supporter box. Even a small donation of $3 to $10 a month makes a big difference, and you can cancel your subscription at any time. Your support means the world to us. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep those headphones on. I hope everyone enjoys today's show. I'm here today with Dennis Upton. Thanks for joining me, Dennis.
It's nice to be here.
Good. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about Dennis's background and his improv experience and some of the unusual improv experiences that you've had. That fair, Dennis?
That sounds good to me.
Good. So, how long have you been involved with improv?
I started 20 years ago.
23 years ago.
I was getting ready to retire from my teaching career, and I thought I need something else to do, and improv sure sounded like a lot of fun.
So what type of improv training did you take?
I actually started with an adult education class. It was being taught by an instructor who actually ran a comedy club, and one night a week he had improv, and I think this was his training ground to find new people to perform for him. So 3 of us from that class actually joined his improv group.
Okay, that was a way to fill the stage.
Yes, it was.
And sell some beverages.
Mm-hmm.
Good. And how long have you been coming here to the Villages?
I think it was 8 years ago we started coming down, and I think it was the second year I thought, there's improv going on in the Villages. I should check that out. So that's why I'm still here 8 years later.
Good, good. And in all the improv scenes that you've done, what are a couple of your favorites?
Well, sometimes when you do a scene, it turns into magic immediately. I remember one scene back home, another friend and I, and we were just serfs digging a burial site for a king, and it turned magic, and the audience loved it. And then you can't recapture that because it's over and done, and that's the trouble with improv. You want to say, oh, I wish I could do that again. Well, one time down here in the Villages, though, you asked me to step in and try a scene with an inventor. And instead of just being Dennis, and one of the things I found with improv, when you go on stage, you're never Dennis. I'm in Dennis's body, but I want to be another character. So this character went on stage, became Victor, and he had sort of a Russian, Eastern European accent. And I remember leaving the scene when we did that, and one of the other performers came up to me and said, "Are you Russian?" I said, "No, I'm just not myself when I enter the scene."
So, Victor, what was your biggest invention?
My country, not like your country, Mike. Very, very nice country, but people have flabby parts, So I take product, I take goat milk, old goat milk, and then I take hat from old man. Chop head up, very tiny pieces, mix it goat milk, and let it stew for a while, in sun, very good in sun. Then you take product and you got underneath your chin, you got this shaky turkey type thing there, You put my product on, Mike, and pretty soon it tightens up. You look good. Cher, Cher the singer, she put too much on her face. She can't even smile no more, Mike. She used too much. Kardashian, not enough. They got this great big thing in the back, Mike, not good. But it works very good for different parts of you,
Okay.
And that was when Victor entered my head. I'm not sure who's entering my head when I walk on stage each time, but somebody comes out.
It generally works out pretty well.
Yeah, most of the time. And once in a while you say, well, that wasn't the best choice, but it's improv.
Yeah, yeah. And before we started recording, you were talking to me about some of the other unusual uses of improv that you've used.
Yes, I've been fortunate to have a lot of different performing opportunities. Santa Claus is one that comes to mind, and that's basically total improv. I have been fortunate to have 30 years of teaching 10-year-old kids, so working with little kids doesn't scare me. But sometimes you come up and parents and children have very unusual requests. Sometimes it takes you by surprise. Sometimes you want to laugh, and sometimes you think the family needs a laugh. So being Santa Claus for many years in Buffalo, I'm Santa Claus at the Buffalo Zoo. I've worked with the Buffalo Sabres and a number of private groups. But also, there's something called patient simulation work. And there are many colleges in the Buffalo area who have healthcare programs, and they need patients for the healthcare students to work with. So one day I might have my hand amputated and they're teaching me mirror imagery. Another day I might have pneumonia. So I'll cough like that basically all day and then walk away. Your hand is healed, your cough is healed. Another spot is one of our hospitals. It's a cancer institute, and they're teaching a wonderful program with empathy. So I'm always the same person. I'm Greg. I'm 66. I have prostate cancer, and the doctors and nurses are learning to deal with empathy and delivering bad news to a patient. But because I will do this 6 or 7 times in a row with the same 6 or 7 people watching their person with them doing the role play with me, I've decided to make every character different. So one of the characters, he's just a plain old laid-back goat farmer, Mike, and it just takes everything, just kind of comes along, it's kind of easy for him. And then another one might be a very strict military person, and everything's black and white, yes, no. And it becomes something that the people I'm working with kind of like it, because I'll change my shirt or my hat. They see now, here's a different person in Dennis's body, and they're kind of curious. One day I was doing it, and I have basically 8 characters. There were 9 people doing it, and I wasn't certain what I was going to do. And then they said, put on that plaid flannel shirt and come back and be another character. And so this is improv. I knew I had to do something, so I slowed down my speech quite a bit and made it a person who had some challenges, and they had to learn how to deal with a person with challenges.
Do all the characters have to have goats?
No, no. But a couple of people, one of the guys said, I would take your goats from you. And I said, what would you do with them? He said, well, I'd eat them. I said, you're not going to get my goats. So it's improv again. But what's nice, the group that I did performing with was called Comedy Sports, which is a national group of improvisational locations. And once a year they get together and they have like a week of training and performance times. And I got to take a class in accents. And it was so interesting because what they taught you was to take a key word. And if I wanted to do Irish, you had to think of the word potato. Because potato goes up and down, In an Irish voice, it goes up and it goes down like that. And if you think of that, you can get Irish, and the audience is going to think you're still speaking Irish when you switched your voice back and it's not Irish anymore. And the Scottish was kind of good too, because they did that with rolling your R's, and it's a great day for Motakari. So now if you talk like that, then you drop some sounds. It sounds a little bit like you're Scottish, and the audience, they'll sort of fill it in for you because it's not really good Scottish, but it's Scottish in my head.
Okay. And so if you ask to come on down to New Orleans, how would that sound?
Well, I talk a lot like this. You kind of let your voice drop a little bit. Sometimes I tell jokes once in a while, Mike. You want to hear a joke told by a Southerner?
A Southerner telling a little joke.
I got a Southern joke here for you. Actually, this is Dennis talking to a Southerner. So I was driving through Georgia, and it was just after Christmas. We were on our way down to the villages, and I had to get gasoline, and the gas station is there, but they had this beautiful manger scene right nearby in the town, and I needed a little walk, so I walked over, and I saw the manger scene was kind of unique because the 3 wise men were wearing fire hats. I thought, that's a little unusual.
Three wise men wear a fire hat.
That's exactly right.
Were you Macon, Georgia?
I was in Macon, Georgia, Mike. Yes, I was. So when I paid for the gas, I said, that's a really remarkable scene you have there, the Christmas scene. but I'm a little confused about the fire hats on the wise men. And the lady behind the counter, she says, y'all ever read the Bible? I says, yes, ma'am, I've read the Bible. Well, you ought to know better than that, because right in the Bible it talks about 3 wise men came from a fire. So that's best told with a Southern accent.
We're going to take a break now and listen to Dr. Craig Curtis.
Should people who want to reduce their risk of Alzheimer's and improve their brain health take something like Centrum Silver, which is advertised as a brain supplement?
Well, another great question, Mike. So in a study published last year, they actually showed that people that took a multivitamin such as Centrum Silver actually did slightly better on memory tests. And this was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study sponsored by the Alzheimer's Association. However, the Alzheimer's Association has come out and said, we still don't have enough information to recommend a daily multivitamin. There was a study that showed no effect of a daily multivitamin a few years back that was also a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. So we do have conflicting evidence on whether or not you should take a daily multivitamin.
So the question is, take a multivitamin if you have an unhealthy diet. If you have a healthy diet, get your vitamins from natural foods.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks very much, Dr. Curtis.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Good.
With over 20 years of experience studying brain health, Dr. Curtis's goal is to educate the village's community on how to live a longer, healthier life. To learn more, visit his website, craigcurtismd.com, or call 352-500-5252 to attend a free seminar.
I'm back with Dennis Upton. Are there any other jokes that only can be told with a particular accent?
Well, my talking dog joke, that takes a little longer. You want to hear the talking dog joke? 'Cause that's really quite funny.
That's not the one where the guy's driving down the road and sees a sign that
Says talking dog for sale.
the talking dog for $3.
Yeah, I paid $10 for mine, Mike. It was $10.
Wow.
Yeah, because, that dog, when I went and talked to him, because the guy, when I said, Mike, I said to the guy, tell me about your dog. He says, go talk to the dog yourself. So I walked out back, and there he was tied up to a chain. I says, hey, dog, talk to me. And he says, all right, you see that trailer over there? There's a fire in that trailer just last week. And little Jimmy was going to get burned. But I called fire department. They came, they saved him. And then he says, you look over there, see that creek down there? Tom and Susie, they were down there playing in the creek. Susie fell in, she's going to drown, Mike. But I called the police. They came too. They rescued her. I says, that's good. So I walked back up front. I'm talking to the guy up front. I said, you want to sell that dog? He says, I do. So how much you going to sell that dog for? He's going to sell for $10, he says. I said, $10? That's not much for a talking dog. He says, it is. That dog's a liar. He didn't do none of that stuff. So that's a good one when spoken with what in my head is a Southern accent.
Yeah, well, I think that works in almost any accent.
Yeah, it is a good one.
Could be an Eastern European dog.
Yeah, well, Victor, I don't know. He hasn't, maybe an Eastern European goat that could talk. Let's see how that works.
Okay,
I'll adapt it to the country.
That might be a good idea. So, Dennis, you played in several of our shows here in the villages, and you worked in the show in February, and I know you're not going to be in the show in April, but why don't you tell our listeners why they should go to an improv show?
Well, back home when we would do a show, we'd say, thank you for coming to our show. Thank you for paying to see a show that hasn't been written yet. And that's kind of what improv is. You're going to see a show that hasn't been written yet. And the beauty of improv is you can never predict what's going to be said and how it's going to be said and the mistakes that are going to be made. And those can be the funniest things, the mistakes. If you're on stage as a performer, you learn when you've made a mistake, take a bow. They're going to laugh at it, so don't try and justify your mistake.
We call, in our set of rules for improv, there are no mistakes, just opportunities.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and it's an opportunity because you really have to take what's given to you, and we call it justifying, try and use it somehow and make the scene go forward. And once in a while, you run into a car crash, and then you have to try and straighten that out. But it's a lot of fun because, again, it's unpredictable. It's meant to be just funny humor. So check it out if you haven't. And if you have, you want to come back.
Tell everyone about that improv festival that you go to. Is that open to anybody?
No, the improv things that we had actually were sort of closed. We had, I think, 25 cities at that time in the U.S. and a couple in Europe, and it was all doing the same type of improv, which is
Okay.
comedic short skits. Maybe
Yeah.
there's long form, short form. This is all short form.
Right. I also learned this weekend at a convention I was at that there's medium form with the scenes run 20 minutes, 30 minutes.
Oh,
Okay, as opposed to long form. But it's all fun.
mm-hmm.
Any last words of improv you want to give to
Well-
our listeners, Victor?
Well, it's kind of funny when you said medium form. My idea immediately went to some kind of person with a crystal ball doing improv. So that's where the head goes, folks. If you talk to an improv player too much, they're not good at scripts, but they're good at inventing places in their head that don't exist until they start talking about it. So just let your head be open and come and play. It's just fun.
Thanks for being with us, Dennis.
Sure enough.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. This is a shout-out for supporters Ed Williams, Dwayne Romich, Paul Sorgen, Kathy Loving, and Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. The way our show grows is with your help. Text your friends about this show if you enjoyed listening, or just tell your friends about the show. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2025. All rights reserved.